call it a reserve.
Yeah.
Okay, now I've got a reserve of $1,000, and that means if I loan $9,000, I've still got 10% in reserve.
Yeah.
So I can create $9,000 out of thin air because I still have 10% in reserve, which was the deposit. And that's exactly what I do when I create a loan as a banker for the guy that wants to buy that car. That money doesn't exist prior to the loan. It comes into existence at the time of the loan. So the amazing fact is that for every $1 billion created out of thin air by the Federal Reserve for the federal government, by the time that gets into the commercial banking side, an extra $9 billion can be created out of thin air by the banks.
And we have...
So, you see, when you just look at what they create for the government, you're looking at the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah. So we have, and also on top of that, I guess we have the whole, question about interest and stuff like that. Isn't that right?
Yes, of course. Interest plays on that. You see, when the bank loans that $9,000 that it didn't even have to have, it just creates. It collects interest on it.
Yeah.
Now, just think about that. That means that the banks collect interest on nothing. So when they say they're collecting 3% interest or some modest fee like that, don't get tricked by that. They're not collecting 3%. They're collecting infinity.
That's right. Oh, my. And this, I mean, in the long run, I don't know if this is true, but I heard, stories about that the U.S., economy totally collapsed, I guess, prior to 1933 when the Black Thursday and all of this occurred. But I mean, does this drain the country's economy? What happens here in a way? How is, I mean, can this go on and on forever? What's going on?
Well, no, it can't go on and on forever, but it can go on and on for a very long period of time. That's the part where nobody knows where the end of the line is. There comes a time when the bubble bursts, and all of this nonsense comes to an end. And at that point, those who are holding tangible assets and not these little pieces of paper or computer entries that say dollars, if you're holding real assets such as gold or silver or real estate or a warehouse full of new tires or whatever it is, you're in pretty good shape. But those who are left holding these little monetary units that are collapsing, they're wiped out.
Yeah.
And we've seen that over and over and over again in history.
Yeah, and it seems to be, a standard procedure also to, in order to, obtain more wealth, as it were, to buy up a country's currency, basically, after collapses and stuff like this. Do you think that there seems to be at the moment, at least up here in Sweden, and I've heard about there's a big housing bubble going on. A lot of overpriced houses are out there, and if something were to happen, people wouldn't be able to pay back their loans that they have on their houses and so forth. Do you think that this is something to be concerned about at this time?
Well, I definitely do. I know we have that situation in spades, as we say, here in the United States. I didn't know that was true in Sweden also, although I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
As long as, here's the thing. If you can create money out of nothing, you don't have to charge an awful lot of interest on it to show a profit. Okay?
Yeah.
So when the banks have this ability by law to create money out of nothing, they can push it into the economy at very low interest rates. They could push it in at zero interest rates; wouldn't make any difference.
Sure.
But they want to show a profit, so they keep lowering the interest rates to lure people into the banks to borrow money.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way that banks can make money is if others come in and borrow money and pay this interest fee on it. And so they're always trying to push the interest rate down far enough so that it's attractive enough to bring everybody into the banks to borrow money.
Yeah.
And so once that's done, you see the impulse or the motivation is to drive those interest rates below the natural level that they would have to be if money were based on something like gold or silver. Because in that case, you can't just create the stuff out of nothing, and you got to really, you got to collect a respectable interest rate on it before you're willing to let loose of it.
That's right.
If you've got gold in your vault, you're not going to loan that stuff out for 1% or 2% interest.
Yeah.
This is risky business. You could really lose something, not just ink spots on a piece of paper. You could lose some gold.
That's right.
So that's the reason. And so with the unnaturally low interest rates out there, which are always the result of a system like this, except in moments of correction where things catch up.
Yeah.
But under those conditions, people are lured into debt deeper and deeper because it's so cheap.
Yeah.
And so they'll buy houses that they can't really afford on the basis that, well, I can afford this so much a month, not realizing that it's month after month after month after month.
Yeah.
And compounded, they're paying a huge amount of interest on it.
Yeah.
And let's face it, the average person is not very sophisticated on financial matters, and that's partly because it's not taught in school.
That's right.
You give me 1 or 2 days with any grade school or high school kid. Just give me a couple of days with them to teach them the basics of economics. It's not that difficult.
Yeah.
They're going to walk out of there with a whole different worldview when it comes to money and banking and borrowing and saving and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But it's not taught in school.
No, I mean, then the system wouldn't be able to, sustain itself. So, of course.
No, they really don't. They don't care. They don't want people to be too savvy on these things. They want them to be in debt all of their lives.
That's right. That's right. So, I mean, one other aspect that I did want to tie in here, before we, I know that you have short of time here today, but I do want to kind of connect this, I guess, with the work that you did on your film, the Capitalist Conspiracy. I know that this, I must say that this was one of the first films I saw that, coherently explained how the left and the right connects, as it were, on the top. It gives you a good understanding of how even the socialist agenda connects with the capitalist agenda, if you will. And tell us a little bit about this, mystery, as it were, almost for some people, on how socialism and capitalism connects. We have rich, establishment people that are supporting socialist groups and radical groups and so forth. What's going on there, so to speak?
Yes, that's a very interesting and vital topic. It's another thing that's not taught in school. Why is it? That's the question that many people have. Why is it that these very rich people, like the Rockefellers, for example, and the Morgans back in those days, why is it they're always supporting socialist agendas? Don't they realize that if socialism comes to power, that the capitalists are going to be hung and all that sort of thing? It's kind of a childish view of economics. But in fact, you can see just looking around, some of the richest people in the world are solid supporters of socialism and socialist policies and socialist leaders. They fund them.
Sure.
And revolutionary leaders and so forth.
Yeah.
And so now we're ready for a look at the real world, the way the real world really works. And the way it really works is, first, you have to get rid of these words. These words don't mean anything, and that's part of the problem. Socialism, communism, fascism, Nazism, all of these things are merely variants of one ideological concept, which is called collectivism. And that's one of the things we're trying very hard to get people to learn about and understand, that collectivism is really the concept that we're talking about. It can take different forms with minor variations. That people carry different flags and all that sort of thing. But when you really look at it, it's all the same thing. The world, in the Western world at least, is divided in a debate between two ideological concepts, and only two. All of these other words are diversionary. The contest is between collectivism on the one side and individualism on the other side. And as I mentioned before, communism, socialism, fascism, Nazism are all variants of collectivism.
Yeah.
What is collectivism? All right. Collectivism is the concept there are different qualities to it, but I mentioned one earlier. It's the concept that the group is more important than the individual, and that the individual must be sacrificed if necessary for the greater good of the greater number.
Yeah.
That's one of the tenets of collectivism, and you'll find that in all of those regimes that we talked about: communism, fascism, Nazism, socialism.
Yeah.
And even here in America now we've got neoconism and all. You find that element and others which we might talk about in all of them. So the only difference is the names of the people.
Yeah.
And the slogans and the emblems on their flags, but the essence is the same.
Yeah.
So, for example, in the world today, we see two very powerful forces out there. On the one side, I'm going to make a quantum leap here, and this is probably where we're going to lose your listeners, because I haven't had a chance to develop this and to prove that this makes sense. But anyway, here it is, blam blam.
Sounds good. Yeah. Shoot.
The world is divided into two major groups. On the one side is what I call the Rhodesians. These are the descendants, the ideological and economic descendants of Cecil Rhodes, who created a secret society upon his death. We know this because it was funded in his wills, and there is a book written by the man who was the administrator of Cecil Rhodes' wills. His name was William Stead, and he describes the purpose of the wills and so forth. And then there is a historian of this group called Quigley.
Yeah.
Carroll Quigley.
Carroll Quigley, yeah.
Yeah, he's a very well-known historian. He was a professor at Georgetown University, and former President William Clinton studied under him. In fact, Clinton was one of his devoted students and followers. And anyway, we know from very solid history sources about this secret society created by Cecil Rhodes, and the purpose of it was to control the world from behind the scenes and to create a new world order based on the model of collectivism.
Yeah.
Now, this is the whole theme. We don't have time today, but we can show. This isn't even controversial. We can show that the United States and England and Canada and all of the former dependencies of the British Empire are now firmly in the grips of the descendants of Cecil Rhodes. In the United States, the most prominent of those groups is called the Council on Foreign Relations.
Yeah.
And the Council on Foreign Relations is an outgrowth of the secret society created by Cecil Rhodes. How do we know this? Because the historian of the secret society, who is Carroll Quigley, says so. And he's written a big 600-page book.
Tragedy and
more pages than that, describing it in great detail.
Yeah.
Anyway, half of the world is controlled by these people. And the other half, however, is controlled by another group, which I call the Leninists. We used to call them the communists, but they got smart. They got rid of the name communist. They haven't changed, mind you. But they got rid of the name.
Yeah.
They just took that hat that said communist across the front of it. They turned it around, and now it says social democrat.
Yeah.
But you notice the heads underneath the hat didn't change.
That's right.
The same guys pretty much are running the show, but they got a new rhetoric. Now they're talking about capital markets and profits and so forth.
Yeah.
Now we get down to the essence of what I'm talking about is that you take a look at both of these groups, the Leninists and the Rhodesians. They're both of them totally collectivist. They believe exactly the same things ideologically from top to bottom. It's just the contest between them as to which one is going to win. Which one is going to control the world?
Yeah.
Which one is going to be the dominant force in this new world order based on the model of collectivism?
Yeah.
You don't disagree over anything except who is going to be the top dog.
So this is a game.
It's a fabulous game, and it's been going on for 100 years, developing.
And
so the point I'm trying to make here is that when you see President